Jim, I know Siam Canadian is moving a lot of shrimp kind of from the supplying countries into North America as one of its markets. Does that largely tally with what you've seen and are seeing now?
All right, things have changed. They've changed permanently. As Jeff was saying, on the retail side, the growth in retail seafood sales will never return to pre-pandemic levels. People have gotten used to buying seafood, particularly shrimp, but other seafood as well, at their local supermarket, either in-store sales or buying it online or through e-commerce sites or whatever. People have become accustomed to cooking seafood at home. It used to be really for the majority of people. Now, there've always been strong retail sales, obviously, but it used to be for the majority of people something that you go out to eat because you don't really know how to cook seafood. You don't know how to cook shrimp or scallops or whatever, and it's kind of special occasion food anyway. So at home we have chicken or pork or steak or whatever, and when we want seafood, we go out to a restaurant. So there's a big sector of the population that has figured out that seafood is actually really simple to make. You can do a lot of things with seafood very quickly. It cooks quickly. To cook shrimp is a matter of minutes versus cooking a meat item that can take 15, 20 minutes or longer. So it's fast, it's easy to do, and you can make good tasting food quickly. So there's the increase in retail sales through the course of the pandemic, that will drop off. That won't maintain these high levels once everything's completely back to normal, but it'll never go back to pre-pandemic levels. So retail has permanently gained an increased market share, and that includes e-commerce, and any type of retail, pickup, whatever you want. It's all there, and that's permanent. The increase we're seeing now, I mean, the U.S. is leading that because I have to give the U.S. credit. You really did a good job on the vaccinations, better than anybody, although you screwed up on the pandemic itself, but we won't get into that. But the vaccination rollout in the States has been amazing. A few other countries have done such a good job. So America's opening up first. So things are opening up, restaurants, sports events, concerts, everything. So there's a pent up energy of people over the past 14 months of not going to restaurants and not going to events, sporting events, casinos, campgrounds, you name it, whatever. And it's happening at the most opportune time. We're just getting into summer and things are opening up. So people with all this lockdown fever are ready to go out, and they're ready to go out and spend money. And there's money to spend with the checks that Mr. Biden is sending out, and other things that are happening with the economy growing now. There's lots of money to be spent, and it will be spent, and that money will. The more money spent, the more that will create economic benefit, and more money to be spent. Yeah, so. The opening of food service is going to be quite steep, in my opinion. It's going to be quite dramatic. Now, there's big sectors depending where you are in the United States. Canada will follow a bit later. Canada's a little bit behind on their vaccination, quite a bit behind actually. They haven't done as well, so they're 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 months behind the U.S. in terms of them being able to open up and get back to normal. So a lot of Canada is going to miss the summer boom, which is the U.S. is going to grab more than any other country, in fact. So people are out. They're going to be partying. They're going to be going to restaurants. They're going to be having barbecues with friends. So there's just a ton of consumption that's going to happen over the course of the next 4 months. From now through Labor Day and past. Now, retail is not just going to drop off because of that. People, as Jeff said, people have gotten used to buying seafood in retail. So retail will drop off a little, but consumption in general is going to be really, really large over the next several months. We have all the bumps in the road here. We have supply problems. We've got India, who's suffering a catastrophe in terms of their COVID situation, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel there either. Vaccination rollout is not happening, and it's a mess there, and it's terrifying what's happening there. We have the shipping problem, and the shipping problem is not going to resolve itself overnight. The shipping companies are doing wonderfully. I wish I had invested in Maersk or some of the other lines earlier in the year. I'm sure their stocks are doing well. They're making out. It's not completely their fault, but they're taking advantage of the situation. I think there's no doubt about that. I better be careful. I get some of my containers canceled if I talk too much here. So we have that. We have a lot of impact in the supply chain from producing countries such as India, where you have a problem with workers in factories now, with factories running below capacity, with farmers harvesting earlier because they're afraid of what's going to happen, as Sophia said, harvesting earlier now, and instead of harvesting shrimp, which would have been larger sizes, which are more targeted to food service, whether it be Europe or North America, they're harvesting smaller sizes, which are more retail oriented, and they're going to have an abundance of these. And then I don't know what will happen later in the year when they were supposed to be harvesting the larger sizes. I think those will come up short. Indonesia's been under a lot of pressure this year, good pressure. Retail purchases out of Indonesia have been very, very strong. And they continue. And Indonesia prices, as Sophia says in her weekly blog, Indonesia prices have been firming up. Vietnam, surprisingly, their prices have weakened a little bit, but their exports are very strong nevertheless. So I don't think that's going to be a long-lived situation. The real story. There are two stories here. There's food service and there's retail. Retail had a huge shot in the arm because of COVID. Retail will continue stronger than it did pre-COVID, but it will drop off to a degree. But you've got this massive increase in food service consumption over the next 4 months. And that's going to tell a story in itself in terms of pricing, in terms of availability, in terms of pressure on producing countries, and in terms of shipments. It's not only a problem of cold storages being full because of lack of sales, which may have been a case in the past, but just the massive amount, the volume going into the supply chain, it's bottlenecking. It's bottlenecking in major ports in the United States. It's bottlenecking into cold storages, even though there is movement, but there's just a matter of available truckers and available space and how things go in and out. So regardless of sales or lack of sales, there is congestion in the ports. There's congestion getting in from the ports to cold storages. There is problems with lack of containers. So this is something. Now this is a bump. This is not a permanent situation. The shipping lines put more containers and have more available vessels. They're going to make more money ultimately. So it's not in their interest to keep everybody at their mercy as we are now with absurd increases in freight. I mean, I'm seeing our office in China where we were at $8,000 for a container going to $16,000. I mean, crazy stuff, just nuts. And not having containers available, having producers and exporters not wanting to sell on door delivery basis anymore, as they have for many importers and retailers, wanting to only ship into a container yard because they don't want to deal with the aggravation and the uncertainty of managing trucking from a container yard to a final destination to a door delivery. So things like that will continue. I think that the shipping issue is going to be will take us through to the end of the year. It's not going to get resolved within the next few months. It's going to get worse over the summer as shipments into the U.S. increase and Canada follows. The EU, as they open up, they will have the same thing. Things will be opening up there. In the EU, seafood has traditionally been more of a food service item than a retail item, although retail has always been strong. So as they open up, there's going to be a massive increase in demand there. So I think what we're looking at for the next, I see no possibility of a weakness in the market between now and January 1st, and I would be very surprised if we saw a weakness in the market in the first quarter of 22. Eventually, maybe production gets back to normal. India gets through their COVID issues. Other countries get through their COVID issues. The shipments, the shipping lines, improvement with container availability and vessel availability, etc. Then things will taper off and things will even out. I think we have a permanent increase in seafood consumption. Period. Okay, not just it's going from retail will drop and food service will come back up. We have a permanent increase in seafood consumption. Now, to what percent that would be, I don't know. But without question, it's become a more important. Let's say it used to be more of a special food. I mean, not all special. Obviously, you have small, shrimp retail, which is not special. It's pretty cheap. It's cheaper than pork or beef or whatever. But for the large part, it isn't. It's more mainstream now. I put it that way. So you've got the premium items, black tiger shrimp and crab and lobster and scallops, going for white tablecloth restaurants or premium retail. And then you have the cheaper mainstream stuff. But it's all become more mainstream now, and that I think is what's going to happen. So I think permanent increase in seafood consumption, a dropping off of retail, maybe sometime this year you'll see retail consumption dropping to some degree, but I don't think a big drop. And food service will be ratcheting strong through the end of the year.
And Jim, do you see that kind of prices just coming under continuous pressure as opposed to different supply becoming available?
Yeah. Prices are definitely going to come under pressure. As Jeff says, there's no supply problem in India. Their production is going to be actually quite good this year. It's their problem will be to get their shrimp to market. Now, as I said earlier, although there's no supply problem in terms of, let's say, overall tonnage, there is going to be some sizing differences coming as a result of this early harvesting, and if that will continue, I don't know. But I will see that we will be short of large sizes from India, regardless of whether they can get the product on vessels or not. So yeah, and there's nobody who can pick up the slack in this short period of time. Ecuador is already increased. Gabriel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you've already ramped up your production significantly. So I think there's not a lot of room left to increase your production out of Ecuador. At some point, the Chinese are going to figure that you can't get sick from a box of shrimp or salmon, because you can't. And even now, I mean, the CDC and the WHO are saying that we've gone overboard in terms of contact, in terms of cleaning surfaces that we touch and everything. Even live COVID is more difficult to contact in that method, in that way, than previously thought. Now, when you get to dead COVID, as Gabriel said, this is traces of COVID. These are not live viruses. So the chances of anybody getting sick from packaging are very, very slim, if they are at all. So at a certain point, the Chinese may say, well, maybe we should start to relax this thing because it doesn't make sense. Now, they've also, there's in the Chinese market, there's a trail of paranoia which has gone through the whole supply chain. So consumers have become afraid of imported seafood because of COVID. So wholesalers and distributors in throughout the country are often repacking imported product and relabeling it as product of China because people, restaurants, food service customers, and retail customers are afraid of imported products. So this is sort of a matter of, I don't know, not quite paranoia, but a matter of sensationalism to make people overly concerned about it. and now they're going to have to ramp that back, and it'll take a little while, I don't know how long, until Chinese people become comfortable again with imported seafood. So you're going to have you have a longer term problem there. Nevertheless, Chinese consumption will start to increase, and that'll put more pressure on countries, very specifically Ecuador, but indeed India, Vietnam, Indonesia. So the demand there is going to increase. Vietnam production will be bigger this year than last year, but nowhere near enough to make up for anybody's shortfall. Indonesia production is good, but it's not going to increase enough to make up for anybody's shortfall. Thailand can increase a little bit, maybe, I don't know, but the baseline isn't there anymore from Thailand. So whatever shortfalls are coming out of India, there isn't somebody to pick up the slack.
Sure. And
on that note, everybody talks about these shortfalls in India, and I agree. I mean, there has to be something happening. We hear the news on the factories, we hear the news on the logistics side of it, but then we see the import numbers in the States, and they're up, and they're up from last year to this year. So
yeah, but I think the key there is that this huge ramp up in COVID is very recent in India. We're only talking 45 days, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, like we were back, I don't know, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, India was where they were patting themselves on the back, saying, "Look, we beat COVID with just by whatever we did," and then they realized they hadn't. So I think we've not yet seen the impact of the COVID situation in India now, and that's going to be hitting the supply chain or the lack of product going into the supply chain going forward, rather than, I think it's too early to see the impact.
I know we're actually moving towards the end of the time that we'd suggested. So I wanted to ask quickly about the Seaspiracy documentary on Netflix. Not so much your thoughts on it. I don't know if everyone's seen it or not, but I wanted to know whether it had filtered through into the supply chains that you work with. Have you seen sort of additional requests for evidence that there's nothing upsetting happening in supply chains? If Jeff, I can come back to you again quickly on that.
For us, it's become yesterday's news. We had a little flurry for a week or days with people asking questions, most of them being our customers who were only concerned about how they should answer if they got a lot of flack. And there was some flack out there, but mostly from people who were already in that camp of anti-aquaculture or anti-fishing. And that's kind of, from our perspective, it's waned. I haven't heard the word Seaspiracy until you wrote it to me, probably in 2 or 3 weeks.
Sure. Jim, have you seen anything different from that?
No, there was really very little blowback from the Seaspiracy. I think part of the problem was it wasn't a well-produced show. It was very entertaining, like an anime that my son might watch. But I mean, they take facts and then they add things on top of the facts, and they have a baseline of truths, and then they extrapolate from there and make their story. So there was so much press on Seaspiracy, so much press which revealed that a lot of the things they were saying were not accurate, were simply not true, were made up. Even a lot of it's true. There's a lot of good points that are being made in that thing, and it's unfortunate that they sensationalize it and twist it to the point where they lose credibility. So I think one of the main reasons, or an important factor in the fact that there isn't been a lot of blowback, a lot of retailers becoming concerned, a lot of other people becoming concerned, is because it's lacking credibility, and that's widely known in the media itself. So even the New York Times, when the New York Times comes against something, you're not off to a good start.
Jim, on that note, is there any forecast? And this is a question for the container companies rather than you, I guess. But is there any forecast on normality in terms of container logistics?
No, I mean, nobody has any idea. And as I said, the shipping lines, may not necessarily be in a hurry to resolve these problems because they're doing exceptionally well out of it. In terms of supply, year to date for my company, we've had our strongest retail sales ever, and they continue. So retailers have been placing more orders and earlier, but they still, as Jeff said, they haven't placed the big ones. The big holiday orders are yet to come for many retailers. So when they go to place those orders, they're going to be finding that production may not be available and shipments may not be available for their holiday needs. So I think a lot of retailers, major food service distributors and others are going to come up short over the holidays. So there's going to be a shortage and very strong demand.